thank you everyone for being here today. Everyone who's in the chat to Whitewolf, for everyone to take the time out of their Sunday evenings to have this discussion. Like I said, this has been a long time coming. Whitewolf has been an icon of the DK community for some time now, and this is something that we've been asking for a long time. It's a weird conversation that we have so many questions about. So I'm really excited to dig in today. So get comfortable. This might go a little long. This could be somewhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours. We're not really sure how long this will go today, but we do have a lot to get through. Today we are going to be talking about dual wield Unholy. And it's, yeah, a meme spec of sorts that was definitely reborn on Warmane and has been built up through this massive following and a numbers don't lie mentality where Whitewolf has consistently outperformed neighboring DKs on multiple fights. Today we're going to be talking about dual wield Unholy, and with the man himself, Whitewolf here, the creator, the innovator, the theory crafting gigabrain who has rediscovered and redeveloped this spec. Now, if you're not at least somewhat familiar with Unholy DKs and Wrath, then I'd suggest that you check out my Unholy DK guide on my channel. It's a good starting place for you for the typical Unholy DK guide, the rotation, a quick crash course, if you will. And it's only about 15 minutes long, so I would highly recommend you start there. But first, I just want to start off, and I feel like it should be stated that this isn't necessarily something that's completely new. Dual wield Unholy was a thing back in OG Wrath for multiple patches. And so I'm actually going to share just in the background a few videos. This first one is just going to be a video from 2009 of this guy hitting a target dummy with the what he calls cookie cutter dual wield Unholy frost spec. After this video goes, I'm going to send in a couple of videos, all from 2009. One will be a dual wield Unholy on a noob 25-man heroic, and then a dual wield Unholy DK on Ignis. And this is just a random assortment of dual wield Unholy, just saying that people messed around with this spec way back in the day. So the idea that this is a brand new thing is not necessarily true, but instead that Whitewolf has rebuilt and rediscovered the viability of this spec, which is what we're really going to get into. And I'll be the first one to admit, when I was first told about this dual wield Unholy stuff, I thought I was getting straight up debated. I thought it was a complete meme, and I thought someone in my Twitch chat was pulling a prank on me. I will never forget the moment I was literally killing Saffron and Nax on some fresh server, and somebody started telling me about this dual wield Unholy stuff that this guy Whitewolf was doing on Warmane. And thankfully, I was curious enough to at least like hear it out, despite the thought that I was getting debated completely. Now, firstly, I didn't have good access to Whitewolf. He was playing on a different server than I was. I had no idea who he was, and so his brain and his knowledge of what this spec was just completely out of my realm of possibility. So I had to go a little bit Wild West on it on my own. I made some personal adjustments, personal decisions on what I thought the build could be. I theory crafted on my own, went with a spec, went with a rotation, and just YOLO'd it. And I actually had some surprising results that I thought were decent. In the end, with my own personal just messing around for like 2 weeks, I didn't feel like it was a DPS increase, but I definitely did a lot of things different than what Whitewolf is going to be talking about today. I ended up posting just a couple of these boss kills on my YouTube channel, and it blew up. It was kind of this weird phenomenon where I was literally just like throwing shit out there. It was just my experience with playing the spec and just random footage of me killing a couple bosses with it, and it got a lot of comments, a lot of views, and I was just genuinely shocked at how many people were curious about this spec. And so for Whitewolf, who's here today, for those of you who don't know, this is the guy who everyone on Warmane is trying to mimic. This guy has created an absolute insane following on Warmane. You will see dual wield Unholy DKs all over the place on Warmane, and it's all because of this guy. He is absolutely breaking the meta and has gained so much attention doing so. He's certainly earned my respect as a theory crafter, and I'm honored to be joined by him today. So Whitewolf, thank you so much for being here, brother. Any intro that you want to share about yourself and who you are?
I'm just a French dude who likes blasting, I don't know.
I got you, man.
Thanks for having me.
No, yeah, I appreciate you being here. This is gonna be fun. I've really been looking forward to this. Do you think you could share with us today, maybe just about who you are, what your experience with Wrath of the Lich King is, and what guilds do you currently play in?
Well, I've played Wrath for like four years, I think, since like started on Icecrown and played on Frostmourne season 1, 2, and 3. Basically, I'm playing with local gas station right now, and I just play like to theorycrafting DK, I guess. I don't really play anything else right now, so that's it. I guess.
Are you playing on Fresh, or are you still doing ICC?
Yeah, I'm playing on fresh right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Doing dual wield Unholy on Fresh too?
Yep.
That's great. How did you first start this theory crafting with dual wield Unholy? What is it that caught your attention? Why did you go down this rabbit hole? What happened?
Well, I was supposed to play priest on season 2, and like no one needed a priest, so I just made ZK because it was easy. Then I was like messing around with Unholy. I was super bored because it's like the 200 rotation is like super boring. So I just sat down, look at the talents, and like was like, why can't we dual wield? Like there's literally like zero things saying like in the Unholy tree that say that we can't dual wield, because I knew that Score Strike sucked completely in next Ramas. So I was like,
Yeah.
just what happens if we try dual wielding? And I started there, I guess.
Did you
After
with that starting place of knowing that Scourge Strike sucked, which by the way, I am like 100% with you. Like Scourge Strike, it's like terrible early, which is why I like Morbidity so much early. What was your experience with maybe early days of your testing with this? Was it mostly target dummy stuff? Was it mostly just YOLOing and farm content? Was it with Kahori Sim or what was it?
it was kind of all of it, I guess. Like I was messing around on dummy. I was doing some random raids and shit, and like I was like, this works. Like I felt like I was doing more damage at first. Like then I started simming a bit, and I started testing, like messing around on dummy, and it's like the whole process took like more than a year, to be honest. Like I've been constantly testing shit. So
Right. I would say if you've been doing this for a year, I would say around the time Frostmourne season 2 was in TOGC was when this like firestorm of attention like started to cross my path is when TOGC hit in Frostmourne season 2. Do you think you can talk about maybe why that is and like why it gained so much attention around that time?
I think I was like popping off on meters in TOGC. Like that was the best time, and like I also like kind of almost finalized the rotation. So I
Right.
don't know. I was started talking about it on like different forums and shit. So yeah,
Right.
probably that's why.
I guess with that in mind, if that's when you started popping off with it, that could have been any number of reasons. Maybe you just finally got comfortable with the rotation, or maybe you started scaling. Do you think you could talk a bit about the scaling of Dual Wield and Holy? How do we feel it fares early, like in tier 7, tier 8? And do we think it scales well? Like, is it scaling with armor pin? Is it scaling with weapon damage? Like, what is it that like helps Dual Wield and Unholy? And is it a good early? Is it good late? Or is it just solid all throughout? Can you speak on the general power creep of Dual Wield and Unholy?
I mean, in Nax, like basically Nax, like Score Strike is like at its weakest, basically, because like we have no armor pen, we have no crit. Like this is basically where you're gonna last like at max. So basically in Nax, I'd say it's around 10 to 12% better with Warmane scripting. Like Warmane has pretty decent scripting, so yeah. And like in Oldor, it's gonna be basically the same shit. And in TOGC, you're gonna pop off quite a bit as well. Like basically, if you think about it, like all the way until T10, you're gonna be around like 10% above 200, I'd say. And that's like
10%?
yes, Sims supported as well. Like if you basically take some Sims like Koi's or whatever, you just sim like 200 versus dual wield, yeah, on similar gear. You sim the same rotation just using Score Strike. You don't even take morbidity. You just the only talent change you do is like Nerves of Cold Steel, so the 3% hit,
Right.
and like literally gonna sim the same on T10 with like the two piece socket bonus, which is like Score Strike damage basically. And if you sim like in T9 or T8, you're basically gonna like dual wield is gonna win even with Score Strike rotation, just to show how absurd it is.
And that's fascinating. Man, I already have so many questions when you say stuff like that. So many questions. I want to get to them in a timely manner. But that is so cool. What do you think you could say are some of the advantages to playing dual wield over traditional, besides just say overall DPS increase, which you believe that it is? What do you think like maybe is an advantage? Maybe it's itemization or availability to weapons, or is there anything that we should know in terms of other advantages to dual wield?
I mean, first of all, you don't need such good weapons. Like like the offhand, for example. Like depending on Bloodcake Blaze scripting is like basically not gonna matter at all. Like as long as like if we get the same Bloodcake Blaze scripting as on Warmin, you're basically just gonna need a fast offhand, and that's gonna be it. Like because on Warmin basically it procs from main hand. Like the offhand procs hits with main hand, which works like hack and slash on rogues, I guess,
I'm a
and
fucking
like sword
rabbit.
specialization. So it basically you proc it from offhand and hit with the main hand, which makes fast offhands really good. On like if we compare, let's say, like two 32 item level weapons, like you can probably out DPS like two 51 weapons, like two-handed ones. So like you don't really need that much gear to do damage. Then what else? I guess it's fun.
Oh, sorry.
Like I don't know, like it's really fun because I just get bored when I play two-handed, and like this kind of feels like enhancement shaman, I guess. You also like a thing that's worth mentioning is since you're using D&D glyph on single target, you're basically always going to cleave more than 200, and you're also always cleaving when doing your single target rotation. So you don't even like, let's say on Lich King, for example, like if you were playing 200, right? If
Right.
you D&D, you would like they would say you're basically padding, right? Like with this, you're not padding. You're literally doing your single target rotation. So I don't know.
It's funny you bring that up. I actually had a question about that later to bring it up, but since you brought it up, I've actually always kind of been a believer that D&D glyph is a DPS increase for two-hand Unholy. So it's not a big stretch for me to get there mentally to start thinking like that's a DPS increase because I've already kind of been there.
I mean, depend like on 200. If you actually, I think if you do the dual with rotation, you're gonna do more damage than with normal rotation with Score Strike. But yeah, like I think D&D on single target, like even in ICC, let's say Sharamon, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just throw a D&D on the floor, like you're gonna like it's gonna do about the same damage as actually more damage than a non-crit Score Strike plus Blood Strike, and like on average, like it's gonna average out the same damage as a Score Strike and Blood Strike,
Exactly.
considering crit and everything. So like even on 200, it's not much of a DPS loss. And like earlier on, you don't have that much armor pen, so D&D is actually DPS increase for 200 as well.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you there. The only thing that you sacrifice really with the D&D rotation and the glyph incorporation is runic power generation that you get from the Scourge Strike, Blood Strike.
Yeah, but you can compensate for that with going for the 0 out of 2 epidemic, which also increases your usage of icy touch with play strike, so basically compensates a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
That's basically the rotation you want to use in next, but we can talk about it later, I guess.
Yeah, we can talk about it. As in terms of like early questions that I want to get through is what would you say is the dual wield Unholy DK itemization? What is it like, and how does it compare to standard Unholy? Are there gem changes? Are there enchant changes? And maybe could you talk about trinket choices and things like that?
Generally, the gear is going to be pretty much the same. Like the stat weights are slightly different, but the like the priority is kind of basically the same. So you still need the hit cap, which is now like I'd recommend going for the spell hit cap because on 200 you don't usually go for it because it's kind of stat loss. So you basically stop at 8%. But with dual wield, you basically want to cap it because first of all, you don't lose hits after 8%. Like your hit doesn't lose value, and you use D&D, which also can miss a lot. So like going for the spell hit cap is actually DPS increase. Then what's next?
Do you think
Like
you could talk about like gyms? Are there any changes in gyms?
no, gyms are basically the same. You just gem strength and strength haste in strength bonuses, like any strength bonuses.
Okay.
Yellow sockets, like if it's +4, you should have strength haste, but that's the case for 200 as well.
What about like meta gym? Has anything changed? Are you still using relentless, or have you considered the chance on hit, the attack speed increase?
Yeah, that's the best for until that's best until the TOGC basically.
Which
Or
one is this?
actually not. That's not the case. Like the meta Thundering Sky through Diamond that increases haste on hit.
Yeah.
That's basically based on single target, basically throughout the expansion, unless except for like Lich King, where you want a bit more cleave, I guess. Then you can go for the agility one.
Interesting. I've seen use of the thundering, but most of the time that I've seen it has been with Mimi PvP specs and setups.
It's actually insane. Like it's like kind of underlook because like not many people know about it. They don't even know what it does, and it's basically quite insane. Like it's 480 haste for 6 seconds, and it procs on hit basically. And it's 45-second cooldown, so there's like flat 68 haste, I think. And you can also snapshot your guard with it, which works quite well.
Of course. You don't have to tell me twice about the gargoyle snapshot, baby. That sounds awesome. I just never thought that it would be better than the percent crit increase. That's really interesting.
I mean, you don't like early on. You don't have that much crit, and with like dual whip, what are you critting? Like your melee is all your only thing that crit. Like if you do the math, it's like going to be like slightly better. It's like 30, 40 DPS gain for the
Right.
haste. Also, that's I should mention that haste has like a lot more value on dual wield than it does on two-handed for obvious reasons. Because first of all, like your melee is like 40% more damage. Like, so like why does haste have such a high value on two-handed? Like it's because of icy talents, obviously, and like your pet scales with it. But here's just even more amplified, basically.
Interesting.
So your haste basically has almost the same value as strength on single target. It's like very close.
Um, since we're still on the subject of gear, do you think you could talk about trinket choices? Does anything at all change from unholy to dual, or from two-handed to dual wield?
Um, I guess the only time it changes is like ICC. You just keep death choices, and like you don't really want TBW because like first of all, armor pen kind of sucks because you have less physical damage. Like in ICC, like it's kind of counterintuitive, but like even though you do more melee damage, you lose out on physical damage overall because you don't use strikes basically. So like death choice is gonna work really well as well because like it's a 45-second cooldown, right?
Right.
And your D&D, you basically pop it off every 15 seconds. So you're like every third D&D is going to be boosted by your trinkets because you can snapshot attack power with D&D. So like that works as well.
That's really
So
interesting. I think like at first glance, I would have thought that armor pen would have been better. Like considering things like Grim Toll, Mjolnir, Runestone, I would have thought that those would have played well with the dual wield, considering
yeah,
that your melee damage is doing so much more of your damage profile.
it's less value than on 200 the armor pen.
Interesting.
You have like
Interesting.
45% physical damage in ICC biz, which is like with T10. So you have like 800, 900 armor pen, and even then you do like 40% physical damage. So like in T9 it's actually less than that. And before that it's even less. It's like 30% physical. So armor pen really kind of like isn't good. So
Right. Do you think that you could talk to me about Ghoul Frenzy? This is a talent that no one has looked at, no one has once considered. It felt like a wasted talent point altogether. And let me just say personally, when I was messing around with the dual wield and holy stuff, when I heard about it, I was told about the Ghoul Frenzy, and so I talented for it originally. And in my experience on target dummying with it, it felt very weird to include in my rotation. I was already having to compensate for the refresh of Bone Shield and swapping stances with my Gargoyle snapshot. That including another thing to use a one single Unholy rune on regularly too. I believe the cooldown's only 1 minute.
yeah, it's 10-second cooldown, 30-second duration.
Right, right. God, it's crazy. I didn't think it was worth it. It felt like it fucked me up a lot. So do you think you could tell me about Ghoul Frenzy and just why you started doing it and why is it good?
I mean, first of all, Ghoul Frenzy is DPS increase in almost every spec except for Shadowmourne Unholy with Reaping and like Blood sub spec. When your Score Strike hits like insane, it's like your first source of damage. So until then, it should be DPS increase for every Unholy spec on single target. But like many people don't like to use it because it makes them like fuck up the rotation and shit. But like on dual wield, especially because our Score Strike sucks, like what do we use our Unholy runes on? Like it's just refreshing diseases, right? And D&D. So it still leaves a gap in the rotation, which we filled with Ghoul Frenzy paired with an Icy Touch. So like an Icy Touch on average does as much damage as a Score Strike with dual wielding, because you don't spec into Outbreak, and plus you get Ghoul Frenzy for free. So you desynchronize your diseases a bit, but you just Icy Touches again when you refresh your Plague Strike. So like it's literally no DPS loss. It's just straight up DPS gain. And Ghoul Frenzy is like one of those talents that give you the most DPS per point. Like it's a single point and it's like 300 DPS increase. In
Interesting.
ICC, I think it's like 600 DPS from Ghoul Frenzy.
I guess I guess when I was messing around with it, I didn't think about accepting the fact that my blood plague would fall off and desyncing my diseases. That
Oh,
felt
yeah, it doesn't
weird
fall off. Yeah.
because you're also sacrificing your blood strike damage and scourge strike damage, but in general, we're not really striking often. So losing the uptime on blood plague is, I guess, okay.
You don't
Um,
lose uptime on Blood Plague. You don't. You just replace like you just replace a Score Strike by Ghoul Frenzy and an Icy Touch, and then you just sync up your runes when you have to refresh your Blood Plague again. Like you never drop your diseases. You don't sacrifice anything basically.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. So you're skipping out on your Scourge Striker D&D in the moment where you're deciding to keep uptime on a Ghoul Frenzy?
D&D is your first priority, then you just keep Ghoul Frenzy up, but you have 100% uptime basically on it.
Okay, I gotcha. I guess that makes sense because the Ghoul Frenzy lasts, what was it, 30 seconds?
30 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. And that's twice the length of your diseases.
Per rune, like, it's the most damage you can get from a single rune on a DK. Like, there's nothing else. Like, without considering diseases, because diseases are insane, but like Score Strike is gonna give you like what 4-5k damage, and like Ghoul Frenzy is like one rune is like 30-second duration, 25% damage on your pet. Like it's insane. 25% haste. I'm sorry.
Have you tried Ghoul Frenzy on other servers? Do you think it's a war main particular that is working so well, or do you think
it's the same? Like it's literally the same. It's 25% haste. Like nothing changes on other servers. I'm pretty sure.
Interesting.
So like it's like your Ghoul does melee hits, right? And it does claw, but claw isn't affected. But like your main damage from Ghoul is your melee. So like usually your pet does like 15% damage. Like with this is like 20%. So it's quite insane.
So that kind of brings up a point. Again, with my, I'm always trying to put myself in the shoes of myself, 6 months ago, which was also the shoes of maybe a lot of viewers or a lot of people who are like very skeptical of Dual and Holy. So I'm not trying to be a bad guy here, but I just want to like voice like their potential thoughts. So with all these things with Dual and Holy, one of my biggest concerns back in the day was always it feels like you're doing too much at once. It feels like you're trying to do so many things because one, doing the D&D glyph and including the D&D in your rotation is already a deviation from standard two-hand Unholy. It's a deviation that I kind of always thought was an upgrade anyway, so that's not like hard for me to get on board with. But another thing is I always replaced Glyph of the Ghoul with Glyph of D&D. And so replacing that felt really weird as well because then we're dropping another glyph like Glyph of Dark Death. And Dark Death always felt like a strong DPS increase. And so at the end of the day, like something falls on the priority. Like there's not enough glyphs to go around to include everything, and there's not enough talent points to go around to include everything in a good optimized rotation. So I always felt like the Dual and Holy theory crafting was trying to do too much at once. That's why I was avoiding things like Ghoul Frenzy and Glyph of the Ghoul, so that I could then increase, the D&D and still maintain Dark Death. So do you think maybe you could speak to the concerns of the community who might think that like this is doing a lot, like it's such a huge deviation? Do you think you could maybe talk on that?
I mean, I can cover the glyphs first. So glyphs, you don't drop Glyph of the Ghoul. It's like your highest single target DPS increase from glyph. So the one you're gonna drop is gonna depend on the tier. In Axe and Old War, you're basically your Death Coil is gonna be buffed by a lot because you use as a score Death Coil sigils, right? Wild Black in Axe and Vengeful Heart in Old War. And they also have the set bonuses that increases the runic power, I think, and 8% crit on Death Coil. So you're basically your Death Coil is going to be like your main source of damage. So you want to drop Icy Touch in this case. And then after TOC, you lose all of that, right? And you also gain an insane amount of strength, which makes Icy Touch actually, I mean, not Icy Touch, Blood Plague, Frost Fever actually do more damage on single target.
Right.
Like, no, not like that. Like, it's going to benefit, like the 20% on Icy Touch glyph, right? It's going to benefit you more than the one from Dark Death. So basically, after TOGC, you drop Dark Death and you get Icy Touch. And until then, you just run the Dark Death. You never drop Glyph of the Ghoul because it's your best gold glyph, and you always run D&D because D&D is your single most hardest hitting spell on single target.
Interesting.
I don't know if that was clear, but
no, that's very clear. That's very clear. It's just it's interesting, and I'm glad to know that at least some of those concerns are at least kind of covered, and that you do maintain Icy Touch at least at some point, and you maintain Dark Death actually for the first two tiers.
I mean, if you have like concerns about losing Icy Touch Frost Fear damage, like this, like irrelevant because you just gain D&D, which is like more damage on AoE as well. So
absolutely,
you don't lose anything. You just gain more AoE, to be honest.
We had someone in chat ask, should you go Troll or Orc?
You go for it. Like, I think even if Gargoyle has no cap, I think Orc is still gonna be better. So yeah, like expertise on access, blood, what's it called? Blood Fury, and as well as 5% pet damage is just insane. Like you can't pass it up,
Of
especially
course.
played Ghoul Frenzy. So 5% pet damage is quite a bit.
Of course. Do you think you could maybe kind of talk us through as slowly or as fast as you feel necessary? Just a general rotation. I feel like it makes sense to me, and I've read your messages on the DK Discord, but just so we can hear it out, do you think you could talk about the rotation? Maybe just the opener for us?
The opener is gonna depend on the tier. Like there's like basically two rotations, two specs you go for. Like in next, you basically go for 0 out of 2 epidemic. Actually, 1 out of 2 epidemic because you don't have expertise, but it's pointless. But so basically, well, the only difference is you don't have score strike sigil, right?
Right.
Sigil of brilliance, which you need to keep up in TOGC. And like that sigil, I hate it with all my guts because like it has 80% proc chance, which really fucks us up in this case. And like
Yeah.
it has 10-second cooldown, so like it can really fuck you up. It's like kind of RNG. So like the rotation in Nax and Doldor is like really simple. You basically do your diseases, Blood Strike, Death and Decay, and then you have like one or two choices. Like you do Ghoul Frenzy plus Icy Touch and the Blood Boil, yeah, or you do a Score Strike and a Blood Boil. Why a Blood Boil? Blood Boil does like 40% more single target damage with fast weapons, so you want to do that. And you basically alternate between Ghoul Frenzy and Score Strike, and you just follow that cycle, like diseases, D&D, Ghoul Frenzy, and you repeat.
Interesting.
And
So you're saying Blood Boil and overall does more than Blood Strike?
yeah, on single target for sure.
So the only reason that you're blood striking is for the runic power generation and for your opener with Gargoyle, I guess.
No, the Desolation.
Oh
Uh,
yes, for desolation.
you
And I
gain
guess that
Desolation
there are sigils too. There are a couple sigils who give you a
in
proc.
what's it called? In TOGC, the 2 set bonus is like 45-second cooldown, and like when it's
That's
off
what it
cooldown,
is. That's what it is.
when it's off cooldown, you just do a blood strike instead of a blood boil. But other than that, you blood boil when your Desolation is up.
Damn. Okay, this is getting crazy complicated. Before I even realized it, there's so much more that you're maintaining and changing in the rotation. Whereas two-hand Unholy is just always going to do the same thing every time. The dual wield is looking to optimize between Blood Strike and Blood Boil, constantly maintaining Ghoul Frenzy and all these other things that it just seems it's a lot. It's a lot. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's kind of complicated after TGC. Like until then, it's like super simple. You just follow the cycle. You do top DPS, but like after that, it becomes kind of AIDS. But it's still quite simple, let's say. Um,
Interesting.
until the point we tried to implement Cinder Glacier, but I'm not gonna cover that because fuck Cinder Glacier.
Don't
Just
worry. I'm actually going to ask you about that here in a second.
yeah.
Since we just talked about races, do you think you could cover alliance side races? Are you going for Journey for spell hit cap, or are you going to go for human for the expertise?
That depends. Like if you have someone that's gonna give you the Draenei buff, just go for human. Like most of your weapons until TOGC are axes, swords, and maces. I mean, so like it's just gonna be DPS increase. Also, you get the will of what's it called? Will to survive now, will classic. So yeah, it's kind of decent.
um. Okay, so I warned you we were going to talk about rune weapons. I believe it's my understanding that you're actually running double Fallen Crusader. Is that correct?
It depends on the tier.
Holy
Until
shit. Okay. I should have known you were going to say something like that. Can you explain?
yeah, in Nex and Uldor, you like your Fallen Crusader value is lower because like you have low strength, right? So basically, your main hand is always going to be a Fallen Crusader because it's your single best buff, right? But like when you run double Fallen Crusader, it doesn't proc twice. It just gives you like extra uptime. So basically, on average, like I did like 1 hour dummy runs, whatever. Like it's like 20% more uptime with double Fallen Crusader, right? So like you just gotta do the math. Is the double Fallen Crusader worth it than something else on the offhand? So that's the question. So until TOGC, without the sigil, it's basically the answer is no. So until TOGC, what you run is either Black Magic or Cinder Glacier if you run like RNG. So Black Magic is going to be your consistent choice basically, and Cinder Glacier is going to be if like you're a masochist and you like RNG and getting basically hurt. So yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, let me just say, so everyone is listening. White Wolf just confirmed saying black magic as an enchant on your weapons for DK. Incredible, absolutely incredible. So I love that you said that. In my experience, I just want to quick talk about the Fallen Crusader. when I was messing around with Duel and Holy on Synergy, I found that double Fallen Crusader wasn't giving me any extra uptime at all. I think the weapon enchants were actually uh, normalized on that server, and I could be wrong, but it was just from my experience. I was finding that they felt normalized, so I started using a different enchant in my offhand, which you already say is the DPS increase anyway, to swap out early. So that's just something I want to throw out, and especially for those of y'all who are in the chat or listening to this on YouTube or in your cars right now. It's definitely something to consider moving into Classic Wrath, that we need to figure out the proc rates for our offhands and to see if there's any conflicting normalization between Fallen Crusader in both hands. But I did find that double Fallen Crusader on Warmane, the uptime was, I mean, immediately I saw worlds different uptime. Immediately. Just like 2 days ago, I messed around on the target dummy, and I got incredible double proc rates from Fallen Crusader. So I can get behind that. I can get behind it. Now
I mean,
I want to go back to what you just said about Black Magic and Cinder Glacier. Because as you probably know, I was actually toying around with Lichbane and Nax.
yeah.
I felt like Lichbane was great. And to me, logically, it makes sense. Everything in there is undead, and so it felt like a really good increase for me.
I think
Um,
I watched your stream. I think Lichbane was bugged, so it was hitting for 2%, not 4%. So I don't think it was scripted properly because it was hitting for the same amount as it does on dummy. So it's kind of broken, I think, on the server.
oh, I see.
Yeah, and I think on Synergy, you played on Synergy, right? I think
Yes,
Cinder Glacier was broken, like nothing was consuming the runes, so that could have been a free DPS for you. Like it was
gotcha.
basically unlimited 20% damage on shadow spells.
Interesting.
Uh, but yeah, like yeah, Lich Bane isn't really good. It's like 4% melee hits, like whatever. Like Cinder would be better if you played properly, and like Black Magic would be a lot better.
So with Cinder, are we specifically using the Cinder Glacier procs on things like D&D, or what do you try to prioritize that on?
Basically, like Cinder, the way it works, like it's kind of counterintuitive. It says like your next two spells are going to be increased. Frost and Shadow spells are going to be increased by 20%, right? But that's not all it does. Basically, like you can also snapshot your diseases with it. Like if you do a icy touch and a plague strike, like your diseases are going to have 20% increased damage for the duration, and you can also snapshot that with Glyph of Disease, but that's the relevant.
Right.
Also, when you have the buff on yourself, right, and you pop a D&D, or even if you have a D&D up and the buff the buff occurs, like right, if you get the Cinder proc, it's basically gonna your D&D is gonna do 20% more damage. And yeah, and like the only things that consume the charges are Death Coil, Icy Touch, and Blood Boil, I think. So
What
you
about
can
Scourge Strike?
Scorch Strike doesn't do anything. It doesn't even get increased, I think.
Okay.
And
We're going Black Magic. You brought Black Magic up. That sounds crazy. Is it really just for the snapshot, or is it because it also dynamically increases the haste of your ghoul as well, and just of course having haste on ourselves?
I mean, it's like 250 haste every 10 seconds for no every 35 seconds for 10 seconds. So it's like 20%, 27% uptime. It procs on cooldown. It procs off necrosis as well, which is basically your auto attacks. And it's like
Wow.
250 haste. So it's like 70 flat haste all the time. And
Wow.
you can also snapshot. And like that's what you do. Like you just run it like straight up. You just use it until the TOGC, right? And after that, what you can do is like basically you use a offhand with black magic on pull. You snapshot your gargoyle or whatever, if depending on the scripting, and then you can just swap out to Fallen Crusader when you have a free GCD, which you will after the opener.
That's incredible. I love that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I am one of the cheesiest guys in the world when it comes to snapshotting your gargoyle, so I can 1000% get behind that. That's awesome. It's something I never thought of. What about berserking? Have you thought about berserking offhand instead of black magic?
Yeah, I tested it as well. It was quite expensive, but yeah, Berserking is like 1 ppm when Black Magic procs on spells. So like Begin has a cooldown, so it's going to be always 27% uptime. I don't know if it's going to be like I don't know if they're going to fix it, make it not proc on Classic or whatever. That has to be tested. I don't know how they're going to do it, but like Berserking is 1 ppm, right? And like anything that's ppm on your offhand is going to be inconsistent and like unreliable, right? Like your
Sure.
falling hitter is like 2 ppm, right? And even when you put it on your main hand, like it doesn't work. Like berserking is going to give you like 10% uptime for like 400 400 attack power, right? So it's like it's really not good. It's
Right.
just inconsistent and not worth it.
I mean, even Fallen Crusader itself, even if it's normalized weapon procs, I feel like Fallen Crusader is still probably going to outpace the Berserking just because of the flat percent increase of your strength. I don't know how much strength it would need to be to equate to 400, but I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, speaking of the particular scripting, do you foresee this build having any issues with maybe the possibility of Blizzard Core and Classic Wrath and the Blizzard developers and all these things? Are there any things that you think might be strange or that you're uncertain about or nervous about for like a Classic Wrath player?
I don't know what they're gonna do about Blood Keyblade. Basically, I don't know if it's supposed to work this way or not, because like I think that they might have implemented that like at the end. I think they made it work like hack and slash at the end of Wrath, so that might work the same way as on Wormade. But even without considering Blood Keyblade, like this build is still gonna out DPS 200 if everything else is the same. So I don't really think there's anything else. Like what they would have to like literally make you do less damage with melee auto attacks for this not to work. Or like buff insanely, like buff score strike by a lot, which would make like cause some class imbalance as well to make
Yeah.
this not work. I don't see that happening. So yeah.
I don't expect them to do any particular specific buffs intentionally to anything. It would just be the scripting that they are prone to get incorrect or to have a certain way. I guess incorrect is the wrong word because whatever we get is what we get. And it's not that it's incorrect or correct. That's what we have to work with. Do you think that if you had beta access to Classic Wrath, what do you think would be the first few things you'd want to test about Dual and Holy on Classic Wrath?
I don't know. I'd probably go score strike to see what they did about it, and like just see how Blood Cake Blade works, because depending on how they script it, your offhand is gonna be faster or slow. So yeah, there's really nothing else, I guess.
Right. Have you had the experience in playing in other guilds, playing in high level guilds against people who have done two hand Unholy, who have out DPS you, or have you always been number one ahead of your neighboring DKs?
Depends on the year. I've only ever lost to Shadowmourne Unholy, which is expected because Shadowmourne is BIS. But yeah, like Dual Wit is pretty much BIS all the way until then, and I've beat every single 200 Unholy I raced, except the Shadowmourne one. Like I think I did like a full run versus that Shadowmourne. It was like 6% difference. So yeah, on average, and he had like way better RNG than I did, and I wasn't even BIS. So yeah, so that's what you should expect. So like Glorin BIS I think is like 10-12% difference compared to Shadowmourne, and this is like 6-7 at most. And this is T10. So like T10 is like your lowest point is dual wield, because like the 2 set bonus is complete ass. Like all your set pieces have armor pen, and like the 4 set is whatever, you know. Like,
Right.
So like not really good. Like it heavily benefits 2-handed, and dual wield still wins.
Are you still using the T9 4-piece in tier 10, the 258?
I was gonna go over that. Basically, if you compare T9 258, right? I think the difference between T9 258 and T10 277 is like 20 DPS on dual wield.
Wow.
So I think with T9 gear, T9 4 set on dual wield, you're gonna do more damage than a Glorin Zelk with T10 full bis.
It basically never makes sense to go T10.
Yeah, like you should just like on classic. I think like people should just pass T10 to others. Like on 200, it wouldn't be that good, but like on dual wield, it's just insane, like, because you don't really benefit from anything in T10 except like strength. So yeah.
We have someone in chat asking how much hit do we need for dual wield. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the same amount for two hand. It's right.
It's 289. I mean, on like the hit cap is like 289 as well on 200, but you don't go for it. You go for 8%, so you need 11% spell hit cap, which is 289. But yeah, it's basically the same. One thing that's worth mentioning though is like the hit after cap is also great. Until like 400, I think hit has more value than armor pen and crit. So yeah, hit is great.
Just for offhand damage, right?
Yeah. Like it's a lot. Like it's great. It's basically the same thing as your haste, but it doesn't like benefit your goal. So it's quite insane.
Whitewolf, what am I not asking here, man? What are the questions that you always get that I am just not asking?
It's like some minor rotation stuff. Like I don't know.
If you have any tips out there for someone who's brand new to Dual Wield Unholy, do you have any advice that you could give them? And maybe advice for how they earn a raid spot while playing a quote unquote meme spec. And bear with me, I'm not calling your spec meme. This is just the
Yeah, people just think it's a meme. Like I'm used to it.
yeah.
Like just join a random BOA. Like people be like, "What is this? Do we done holy? Ha ha ha!" And then I'm like topping DPS by like 2k, and like they're I don't know. It's like it's always funny, always fun.
But do you have tips for them for breaking the meta, or tips for them even just with their rotation and how they get used to the
Yeah,
updating?
just gotta make sure you maximize TNT uptime because like that's the thing you do like to increase your damage. Like basically difference between 50% and like 60% D&D uptime is going to be quite big. So like, and it's like one of the things you can min max about this because there really isn't much else because like your Ghoul frenzy is going to be always up. So the only thing left to do is like D&D. So like as long as your D&D uptime is good, like everything should be fine. And like even if you suck, like I'm gonna give you an example. Like if you do, I mentioned score strike rotation, right? Like if you do score strike rotation on dual build, even if you can't D&D, let's say the boss moves out or something, like if you score strike, you're still gonna do like the same or more damage than the 200. So like I don't know. Like, you're heavily carried by the melee damage.
I have a good question in the chat. Is Dual Wield Unholy still viable in 10 man when you don't get the full support of all raid buffs / debuffs? I feel like that question could be reworded into just how does Dual Wield Unholy do with all the scaling of full raid buffs?
I mean, like you obviously benefit more from melee haste, but it's not like you're gonna do less damage without melee haste. Like it's just gonna be like about the same as 200. So I wouldn't worry about it. Like the rest, like they scale the same with all the other buffs. Like just melee haste works better. I should be fine in 10 months as well. But like your main, you're gonna shine in 25 months, obviously.
Right, of course. Do you think that tier 9 is the peak of Dual Wield Unholy in terms of performance in comparison to all the other DPS? Or is there another raid tier that it's peaking? And what would you say is also the worst raid tier for Dual Wield Unholy?
Yeah, you're definitely peaking in T9. Like you're basically god in T9. Like no one approaches you. Like unless except for some like maybe locks if they get super lucky, like get their corruption trick with tricks and stuff. But like even on single target, you're just gonna pump. And like let's say Beasts of Northern, right?
Yeah.
You're basically gonna destroy there with D&D glyph and shit. Like you're gonna be a god. So yeah, I think I was looking at Wormin logs. I was like 1.5k DPS above every other DK for like a few weeks when I was playing because I switched to tank after, and like I had like 400 gear score less. So yeah, like it's quite impressive.
So what do you think is the worst tier for Dual Wield Unholy?
T10 definitely. I mean, like T10 is like the worst tier for any like Unholy basically because
Of
like you
course.
basically cap around T9, so you don't really scale past that. But yeah, T10 is the worst because you just keep T9 and just get off pieces.
That's always such a funny thing with DKs, and I feel like Frost even goes through this similar progression in terms of their highs and lows. That tier 10 is like so weird, where the tier 10 set bonus sounds really good, but it just feels like everyone else in the entire game is scaling so well, and their set bonuses in tier 10 are so good, and the trinkets are so good for them that you're just kind of sitting there wondering, like, what the hell happened to my class?
Yeah, it's kind of like T10 is kind of sad, but like it's whatever. Like on 200 is okay, but just don't gain that much from it. But on 200 is whatever. Just keep T9 and blast. Like other classes, like mages, you're just gonna outscale. It's not like you're doing bad damage; just everyone else is doing better. You know.
Right. What would you say is the viability of Dual Wield Unholy in PvP? Have you done it at all or considered it at all?
That's pointless. You're just gonna do better with 200 because you're gonna have like what's like you're gonna have more strength, obviously, and like when you have to strike, like you don't have that, you're not gonna be sticky to your target. So you're gonna like 200 is just gonna be better. Like your score strike is gonna be like your main damage, so it's pointless in PvP.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. I did not want to go down that rabbit hole. I really didn't want to.
And it's not like you're gonna D&D on PvP as well. So yeah.
So you said at the beginning that you kind of went down the exploration of Dual Wield Unholy because you were playing Priest, they had you switch, and you just kind of had your own theory crafting that came up about it. Did you know that people were playing Dual Wield Unholy for many patches back in OG Wrath?
Well, it was like they played it because for different reasons, basically. Like no one basically played it in 3.3.5, right? But it was okay before like Score Strike buff, like I'd say like in like 3.2 and shit, like a research, but there was like no mention of it in 3.3.5. Everyone was calling me retard for doing it, so yeah. Like I knew people played it like earlier, but it was a different build for like different reasons and like different patch as well.
Well, awesome, man. Fuck, man, we blew through those questions. We flew through everything. I'm genuinely out of questions. I'm looking at Twitch chat right now for inspiration. If there's anyone out there who has any burning questions about Dual Wield Unholy, we have Whitewolf here. Like, let's use him while we have this chance. Are there any burning questions that anyone has? Because I feel like I've completely run dry here.
Yeah, I mean, like people ask me like if you're gonna have trouble like getting weapons, but are you really gonna have trouble getting weapons? Like, who are the ones like taking like one-handers in next, for example, on Old War? Like Frosty case, like there's one Frosty in your rate, like you can't get one weapon. Like I don't think that's a problem. Like two-handers, like there's way more competition. And like in Old War, for example, your best weapons are from basically 10 mens, like two last bosses, so there's no competition on that either. And like in T9, you just need some access. You can pump with 10 man access as well, but like you're gonna be competing with like combat rogues, which are meme anyways until like T10.
Right.
You're gonna beat them anyways, so like I don't know. You should be fine, like getting a weapon or two.
Do you? So when do you know when to do a fast offhand and when to do a slow offhand? I know you said it's based on the Bloodcake blade scripting, but how do you know?
Well, if you're just need to see like if offhand hits, offhand procs main hand hits basically on block blade. If procs from offhand hit with offhand, you're just gonna go for slow one for more damage. But I think it's gonna be the same actually. Like if it procs from offhand and hits with offhand, it's gonna be normalized basically because you're just gonna hit more of them, but you're gonna do less damage, so it's not gonna matter. But if it hits with main hand, it's always gonna be better to go with a fast one.
It makes sense. And so you're doing fast on War Main right now with your offhand.
Yeah, that's like 200 DPS increase, I think.
Can you go double black magic and snapshot your gargoyle with that?
It doesn't stack. It has a cooldown as well, so it doesn't stack.
Okay. We have a question from the chat. Does hit still have more value than crit in 4-piece T9 since crit stat weight is higher in T9?
Crit has more value than what?
Hits. The question itself seems weird, and I would say like you want to go for crit after you get hit cap. That's the answer, right?
Yeah, I mean haste is always your best stat, secondary stat. Besides, after your hit cap, you basically go for strength, and from items you want to maximize haste, and you just like jump strength haste in yellows. But like crit is okay, yeah. It's gonna be a bit better than hit post spell hit cap, but like before that, crit sucks pretty much. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah, crit has its highest value in T9 for sure.
So if black magic doesn't stack, then going double black magic, even for like an enhanced shaman, is kind of worthless too.
Yeah, I mean you always want the Fallen Crusader. It's your best enchant by far. Like nothing comes close.
Right.
So your main hand is always going to be Fallen Crusader, and your off hand is going to be like Black Magic or Fallen Crusader or Cinder or whatever. You can like if you want like the most potential, you could probably go for like a Cinder Glacier on main hand because that's going to be a decent amount of procs and like Fallen Crusader off hand, but that's just some meme spec. Like it's going to be like super RNG and like has the highest potential, but that's like also the lowest potential.
Right. So I guess another question that I thought of is with standard Unholy, hit cap is obviously extremely important, but after hit cap, for expertise, two hand Unholy doesn't care so much about expertise since so much of the damage is actually spell. We kind of are comfortable with running like 10 expertise, and we gain more and more and more as each tier comes out. Especially in tier 10, it's going to be really easy to hit expertise cap because there's so much available. How would you weight expertise cap for dual wield? Is it even more important because you are dual wielding, or is it just as equally as important because again you are doing so much spell damage even as dual wield? What would you say?
Like in early tiers next older, you can't cap it literally. Like to cap it, you would have to go for like some shitty 10-man pieces. So you can't cap it in T9 or T7 and T8. And in T9, like basically you have so many easy expertise pieces, you just go for the cap because it's like simple. And also like missing score strike is gonna suck with the sigil. Like it's gonna just delay your TNT. So you can cap it, and you probably should cap it in T9 and T10 because it's super simple. But before that, no, you don't go for it.
Definitely makes sense. Okay, so is there any other what's next for you, Whitewolf? You have absolutely exploded in terms of your popularity and how everyone wants to know more and more and more about dual wield and holy. What's next? Are you going to start breaking shamans? Are you going to break like a DK tank meta? Are you going to do two-hand frost? Like, what's next for you, man?
I'm probably just gonna finish this, like test all, like because I got way more knowledge than I had like last season. So I'm just want to see how I'm gonna do this season, and then probably quit. Just gonna study ICBA. Enough.
All right, one last burning question I heard from the chat. Best professions for dual wield and holy, is it still NGJC?
Yeah, obviously. It's nothing else.
Perfect.
I guess tailoring is okay because you can snapshot your D&D every 45 seconds, but it's like it doesn't compare to jewel crafting. So yeah.
Yep. NG is always going to be mandatory, and I will say that tailoring is decent. I've always been a fan of saying that tailoring is decent, not better than jewel crafting, but decent.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, I guess that's it, man. Again, thank you so much. I'm glad. Look, I have a terrible, terrible, terrible reputation for things like this going way too long. I will talk about something as simple as, like transmog, and I'll talk about it for like 40 fucking minutes, and I'll just get flamed nonstop in my comments. So thank you so much for spending the time talking with me today. Keeping it brief, keeping it this conversation could go so long. I'm glad that people can listen to this and know that they're getting a lot of good information really, really quickly and thoroughly. I really cannot thank you enough. The people have been wanting something like this for so long. And again, I will, once you finish your guide will be linked in the description of this video because I will post the VOD on YouTube. And I want to send everyone to your guide. If anyone has any other questions that we didn't ask or that we didn't go over today in this conversation, Whitewolf will have a full extensive guide. He will be posting out publicly. And if you want to go support him, you can absolutely support him there. Whitewolf, is there any other way that people can support you? Do you have a Twitch? Do you have a Patreon? Or what, man? How can we help?
No, I'm just gonna post it and that's it. It's just UDP, yeah.
He's a simple man, boys. He's a simple man. He doesn't want much. We will definitely be supporting you, though. Once you get that guide out, let me know when you have it, and I will absolutely be plugging your shit right away. Again, cannot thank you enough, man. Like, Zencro, who's in the chat, he's been following my Twitch channel for so long, and I'm just glad to be able to continue to support creators like you because this is kind of what I love. I like getting back into the nitty-gritty, the deep dives, and the high-level theory crafting. Like, this stuff is good. I love it. I absolutely love what you're doing. I don't care that it's a meme spec. In fact, if anyone out there is listening and thinking this sounds like fucked up as hell, like, one of my first experiences in Wrath, I was a Frosty K coming back to a private server for the first time ever, and I remember sitting around in Dalaran. I had a lot of good gear, and I was in this guild, and this one guy who was on a fresh 80, he inspected me, and he was like, this is Ulduar, by the way, Ulduar tier. He inspected me and he said, hey man, you would do more DPS if you went blood subspec instead of unholy subspec. And thankfully I had the right mindset to listen to him because I increased my DPS by a ton. And just having like an open mind, like, is what people need to have here. I think the constant shitting on meme specs or shitting on people who are trying to break something or do something different, like, there's no reason not to, especially on farm content. Like, relax, guys. Like, this is good for us. This is good for the community, and I cannot thank you enough for like your efforts in developing and testing the dual wield and holy. As I think it's really, really good for the community, and it's one of my favorite things about DK is that there's so many layers and so many decision making that goes into all the talents and everything. I just absolutely love it, and so I'm just so thankful and honored that you would join us today, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Like, it was super fun. And yeah, DK is like really fun to theorycraft. Like, there's so much freedom to like, and the rune system, like runing power is so unique that you can like find some new stuff, like, for sure. Like it's not like any class like rogues. What can you do with energy? Like you basically like you know what you're gonna do. Like there isn't much. It's basically two buttons. Like and with this you have so much more freedom. So it opens like different possibilities, I guess.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Seriously. All right, man. Thank you so much. I'm gonna be in it right there.